Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Today I speak with Oliver Hickman about building a property portfolio from a young age. You obviously love this business. Tell me what you love the most about it. Today, an absolute exclusive. Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Well, Ollie, lovely to have you here. Can you introduce yourself to us?
My name's Oliver Hickman and I'm the Managing Director of Brooksfield.
Fabulous. Now, I hear that you were quite interested in real estate from a young age. Tell me what sparked an interest.
I always just had this thing for real estate and for property, and Mum and Dad were always just very interested in houses and property really. And one of the things you may not know about me is Andy was my neighbour, and so we lived right next door to the Freemans and Clifford Ave, and so from a young age I think I was exposed to quite a lot of real estate chat.
Andy's been known to chat a bit about real estate.
So and I kind of grew up around that, but I always just loved it really, and I always knew what I wanted to do from forever really. I just knew it was what I wanted to be involved
with.
Yeah.
How fantastic to have such clarity at a young age.
Yeah,
a lot of people in their 30s are still wondering.
No, that wasn't me. Yeah, I knew.
So tell me about your first foray into real estate.
Well, my first foray into real estate was probably just after university. I went to Lincoln and did a valuation degree.
Yes.
And when I came out of university, it was about the time of the earthquake.
Oh, wow.
And pretty quickly, a mate and I started buying what became known as whereas houses. It was the very early days of it.
Yes.
And it was it was just lucky timing really, because everybody who was older than us was really worried about dealing with earthquake claims, and they had liquefaction all through their houses and assets and things to deal with. And we had absolutely nothing. We could hardly afford the petrol to drive out there really. And so we came up with this idea of trying to buy these houses, which we also had no money for at the time. And we basically started out there buying houses. But in those days, we'd buy them for 50, 60,000 for a house. And we'd do them up and then, figure out something to do with them.
Wow, how amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just lucky timing.
Right. And so you'd buy these homes, you'd repair them to some sort of livable standard, or?
Yeah, we'd figure out something to do with them. Sometimes we'd just buy them and sell them straight on, was what we did a lot in the early days, because we didn't have the capital to buy them. And then once we made a little bit of money out of that, we started keeping them.
Yes.
And so we just built up a few of them over the years. But then we'd also repair and sell them as well. Yeah.
And with that equity, you went on to something further, obviously.
Just keep going, really. We started buying, we got into industrial buildings as well through that time. And then I think just with natural progression, we got into new developments. What also happened was that those houses started to dry up after a while. And every man and his dog was in there as well. So there was 3 or 4 great years at the start, and then that market became pretty overrun.
Pretty saturated,
yeah.
And then you're paying, like I remember some of our auctions of as-is, whereas you're almost paying full retail because the appetite.
That was it.
How did you have anyone mentoring you during that period, or would there be?
No, I think Mum and Dad certainly watched on with fear. And so no, not really. But we just got on and
did it.
Got into it, and we were so busy. Through that time. So.
And in terms of funding, how did you fund them? Were banks interested in what you were doing, or not so much? Or
in the early days of it, you just had to turn up with cash, which we had to find any which way we could, which we tried to make out of either trading them or repairing them and selling them.
Yes.
And then as time goes on, the banks got more comfortable, and we started to develop a little bit more of a business, and were able to borrow money on them. So that was how we got going there. Yeah.
And so once that market sort of dried up for you in terms of opportunities, you moved on to industrial, and then?
Yeah, we had a good few years in industrial, but I always knew that we were heading for development, but it was just a matter of when and getting all that timing right, because there's a lot that goes into that, I think.
Yes. What advice would you give, say, to the early 20-somethings out there that kind of want to follow your success, I guess.
Do you know, the best piece of advice I think I have is to get going while you have youth on your side.
Right.
Because by the time you hit 30, you need to be on your way, really,
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
And the thing about being young is that anyone will let you in their door.
Right.
So doors swing open for you. And it's mainly because people look at you and say, well, we'll give this guy a go. Whereas if you turn up and you're older, people say, oh, well, you know.
Yeah.
But people are intrigued and people like the energy that young people have to get going. So I think the really important thing is also to go while you have the energy.
Yes.
And to get out there and...
Energy's quite infectious, isn't it? So
It is
if
infectious.
You turn up and you're looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed...
Yeah, and people like it. And they,
yeah,
you know,
they're
they
like,
get on your
what's
way.
this kid about?
Yeah, wavelength. But I think then if you miss... It's not to say you can't later, but if you miss that boat, it's harder.
And once you started doing developing, were you building and then selling, or were you building and holding? How did you decide what you kept in your portfolio, what you released?
So we do a bit of both
Yeah.
today in our business. So we build developments which we keep within the company and hold on to.
Yes.
And we build those and we just then rent them out long term.
Yes.
And then we build and sell.
Yeah.
So we have two parts of that business, I suppose, yeah.
Yes. And in terms of when you're selecting those good pieces of land, is there some non-negotiables, some things that must have, or some things you definitely walk away from if it
I think one thing that we underestimate is street appeal, and
Right.
being in a lovely street, that your surroundings do have such a big impact on the way you live. I think there's one thing we really forget about
Yeah.
in property is that we are building homes for people that they actually live in.
Yes.
And so
So the aesthetics of
the aesthetic of the
of the
street
street.
is also really important to
Yeah.
make sure that it's lovely, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Tree lined is ideal, but
Yeah.
we don't have them everywhere, unfortunately.
And in terms of the developments you do, I know they sort of have quite an English feel to them, don't they? Would that be how you'd describe it, or Georgian, or
Georgian, yeah. So on that, my friend and business partner Vinny, we both have an interest in classical architecture, I think, and I think classical buildings are lovely. They basically have a set of rules that you can't break, and they either fit the rules or they don't. And I think that they're lovely buildings because they're timeless.
Yes.
And they're timeless. They tend to be built out of materials that last. And they're lovely buildings to be in, and they're
Yes.
lovely to live in.
Yes.
Because humans pick up dimensions without knowing it.
Right.
And so all those things just make sense. So we have a real interest in it, really.
So what you're saying is there's a lot of intangibles that as the consumer you don't really know that you're being swayed by, but it feels right.
It just feels right. That's what
Yeah.
happens when you go into some of these rooms where they have a high stud and the length of the room is in proportion to the height of the ceiling. You just feel relaxed. You feel at home.
That is
So that's
very
one of the things we're
clever.
pretty interested in. Yeah.
So you're picking streets that you feel your style of home will fit in, and that will,
Yeah, and suburbs
to
in
that, in
areas.
suburbs, yeah.
A lot of places where we build have a lot of old character, 1900 to 1920s
Yes.
houses surrounding them.
So they've got a history to them. They're a bit of a portal to the past
Yeah.
that you can slot.
And I think it's
slot
really
into.
important, but I think it's also important that we blend in with areas and that we keep things architecturally consistent.
Yes.
And so that's why I think some of these black and white plaster boxes we're building next door to a villa isn't really a great outcome for the city.
Yeah. And I mean, Christchurch by its nature and heritage is an English feeling city, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and it's it was the garden city. So
And how fabulous that you're bringing that back in a reimagined, reinvented way, but using quite traditional styling.
yeah, I think I think that building anything really is a privilege, and if you do a good job of it, it ideally should outlast us. I mean, our building should be longer than we're alive.
Yeah.
And so I think you do owe it to, you're basically building relatively permanent fixtures that you owe it to the city and to the people and to everything really to make sure they're as lovely as you can.
Yeah. I really love that. I can imagine you in your 50s, 60s, 70s driving your whānau around the city saying, yes, I built that.
Yeah,
and
we
I...
already do a wee bit of that now. Everyone gets quite sick of the tours. Yeah,
Yeah, you
Apart
could have
from
tours.
Mum's always up for a tour.
Now, for any of us that have worked in real estate a long time,
Yeah.
property markets are cyclic and sometimes predictable, sometimes not. How do you, navigate your way through that?
Well, I think that if you can use markets to your advantage, I mean, you've got to go with it, really, and you've got to be prepared for the worst. I think the whole time you need to prepare for the worst. And I try to run our business as if it's a flat market every day.
Yeah.
And so I think that's about being disciplined, sensible with decisions, and if you have a great market, looking at it as a bonus. But certainly I wouldn't want to go hanging your hat on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And also, people don't never talk, but there's a lot of advantages to a flat market, to a down market. There's a lot less competition in the market for anything. You know, you guys in real estate probably notice this, is that there'll be less agents out there. There's a lot less of everything. And so there is also an opportunity. Things tend to get cheaper, land gets cheaper, building materials get cheaper, more people are wanting work. So there's always something easy and something hard. And what we say is that in a booming market, sales might be easy, but everything else is hard.
Yes.
And the reverse goes for a down market. So sales are hard, but everything else is easy. So there's always a problem somewhere.
Or there's always an opportunity
And there's always an opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's just about making the most of them, I think. So,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And riding the market and realising that markets are cyclical.
Yeah. Do you kind of believe in when it's yinging, we should be yanging?
Yeah, we try to do that.
Yeah.
We do try, but it's also hard because we have to be active the whole time in selling houses to keep our place in the market. So it's a wee bit of both. But yeah.
Are you prepared to take things on the chin when it's time to move them on, or do you always want to be making money?
No, I think the most important thing in a business like ours is to keep moving forward.
Yes.
And it is to keep moving, whatever the cost, basically. What absolutely kills you is standing still and waiting. And often things don't really get better tomorrow. We think they do, but they just don't, for whatever reason. Yeah. So I think if you're having a bad run, sometimes you just got to cut your losses and keep going.
Is there, if you could go back and talk to Oliver, who'd just come out of Lincoln, is there any advice you'd give him with these sort of 14 years experience under your belt?
Yeah, I think that when we had the opportunity that we did early on, we also didn't really know what an opportunity it was. Yeah. And so in a way we should have made more of it, but we couldn't at the time. We did our best with it, but sometimes I wish I could go back to those days knowing what we do now and go and have another run. Yes. But life's not like that, unfortunately. No. But I think that would be the thing, is just to make the absolute most of it. And connections are a big thing and a big part of this business. And we've been lucky, we've made some amazing friends along the way with all sorts of people. People I would never have expected, and doors that have swung open. And I think you've got to make the most of those things. Yeah. I think it's so refreshing to hear somebody with such great ideas, but yet you feel like you're very grounded, like you've got boots on the ground, you could get quite caught up in the whole success of it all, couldn't you? And I think that the success of it all, it's still very much a work in progress. And, I spend so much of my day dealing with the problems. It's basically what I do now. And every now and again I have to go out and I see a completed house and I actually think when I get there, actually this is quite worth it. These are quite nice. But I don't. There's certainly no reason. There's no reason to get caught up in anything. I mean, we're just building houses basically, and we're interested in continuous improvement. So.
Brilliant. Continuous improvement is an excellent
That's
goal.
what we aim for. We don't always achieve it either.
For a 25-year-old to come to you and say, Ollie, I really want to get into developing, or I want to build a portfolio, or I want to get my first house, what advice could you give them? What would you suggest to them?
The only way you'll be able to do any of that is through sheer determination. It depends on everybody's situation, which is different. It depends what capital you've got. It depends on what skills you've got. But the only thing really, I think, is that if you're absolutely determined to do something, you can. It's like first home buyers we have come in. You can tell the ones who are going to find their way into a home and those who aren't. And a lot of it actually doesn't come down to income or this or that. It's determination.
Yes.
To do whatever it is. And I think it's the same if you're wanting to get your first development off the ground or find your first listing or anything like that. It's
determination. Good on you. It's been such a joy to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
I wish you much continued success. Thank you for the beautiful homes you're building in our city. I love going past them and trying to guess, is that one of yours?
Hopefully it is.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Grenadier podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it.